of the biggest textile producers in the world today. And if you see today, it's in a very interesting position because of the changing global business dynamics in the textile world. India has certain strengths, certain weaknesses, certain issues, certain challenges, but also a whole lot of opportunities which are emerging. In today's talk, we are going to look at where India stands exactly, where it can go, and what India should do to leverage the emerging opportunities to reach that deserving place for India. Now quickly let's look at the global textile world and how India is positioned in this scenario. As everyone knows, China is the biggest producer of textile in the world, having about 35% global share at number 1 position. India stands at 2nd position, however, with only 5% global trade share. As far as cotton is concerned, India has 28% share in the global cotton production and one of the prime countries exporting cotton textile goods. As far as synthetic is concerned, India has 8% global share in the production of synthetics. As far as the spindle capacity is concerned, India has 18% of the spindles, that is about 52 million spindles installed in our country. India is the 2nd largest exporter of textile commodities in the world. So it's at a very interesting position. However, if you see 35% at number 1, 5% at number 2, you can see the big gap and what kind of opportunity India has if country like China, the global leader, vacates some part of the position. Even if 1% gain in the share of the global trade, India doesn't have enough capacities to produce. As far as the Indian textile industry is concerned, how it is poised in the Indian scenario. As all of us know, this is one of the very important sector in the industrial production in India. The textile industry contributes about 4% to the GDP and it employs 45 million people. After agriculture, this is one of the biggest sectors giving employment and therefore it is extremely important sector for the government as well. And therefore textile industry assumes a lot of importance in the strategies of any government. As far as exports are concerned, the textile industry contributes roughly 13% of the total export earnings. Now, as far as the Indian textile and apparel market is concerned, if you have a quick look at the figures of 2016, there has been total domestic consumption of around $81 billion, which is split into apparel production of $63 billion US dollars, home textiles of $6 billion US dollars, and technical textiles of $12 billion US dollars. And India has exports of about $37 billion US dollars. If you look at it, mainly India's strength lies in home textile. As far as China is concerned, as far as Bangladesh is concerned, or as far as Vietnam is concerned, the major growth engines for these countries have always been apparel or garments, which is not the case in India. For India, the growth engine has always been the textiles and clothing, but not apparels. And therefore, India is not able to attain the position actually it deserves. There is a study done by the India's, it is given in India's Textile Vision 2030 by Wazir Advisors. According to that, the domestic production, which is $81 billion in 2016, is likely to go to as high as $300 billion by the year 2030, which means there will be a CAGR of around 10% in the growth of textile consumption. If you look at exports, the exports are going to increase from $37 billion US dollars to $100 billion US dollars, meaning 7% CAGR over the next 1.5 decades. Totally, if you take domestic consumption and exports, then the figure goes from $118 billion to $400 billion, which is about 9% CAGR. This is just to indicate as to how big growth potential India has. Now, where is this growth going to come from? There are certain potential growth avenues which are going to bring this increase in the consumption. One is India today has about 62% cotton share in the total consumption. This is exactly contrary to the world consumption, where synthetic is much higher, nearly 64%, and cotton is less. And therefore, India is always missing the major basket of exports. Slowly, there is going to be a shift from cotton textiles to synthetic textiles, and therefore, synthetic-based fabrics are going to find a great potential for growth in the next few years. Another articles which will contribute to the growth are western wears, active wear, sportswear will also contribute to the growth. Women wear, because more and more women are going for work, so women wear is going to contribute to this growth. Home textiles and furnishings are going to grow at the same pace they are growing today. And of course, as you know, denim, India has a very large share of denim market in the world. Denim is also going to grow more or less at the same pace in future and going to contribute in the growth of the industry in the next few years. Now let's look at the competitive position of India as far as the textile manufacturing countries are concerned. As all of you know, India is competing with major textile manufacturers and exporters like China, in Vietnam and Bangladesh. You also might know that China, the situation is changing drastically in last 3 to 4 years. China is more focusing on high technology manufacturing, and therefore it's vacating some part of the low technology area, which is now wide open for other countries to grab. Now let's compare India's position vis-a-vis those of competing countries. Let's take Bangladesh. Bangladesh, as far as raw material is concerned, it has no raw material, it has no cotton production or very limited cotton production. It relies a lot on imports of raw material like different kinds of fibers, including natural fibers. As far as jute is concerned, it's the second largest producer in the world. Let's look at other countries as far as raw material is concerned. China. China is the second largest producer of cotton and the biggest producer of synthetics, wools and silk. So it has a very strong position as far as raw material is concerned. Let's look at Vietnam. Vietnam has very limited cotton production. It relies largely on imports of cotton. But as far as silk is concerned, they have their own production of silk. Now let's go to the next stage of production. From raw material, let's go to the yarn. But before that, let's look at India's position as far as fibers is concerned. India is the only country which is more or less self-sufficient as far as raw material is concerned. India is the largest producer of cotton in the world. It's the largest producer of jute in the world. It's the second largest producer of silk in the world. It is second largest producer of synthetic or man-made fibers in the world. So as far as raw material is concerned, India is in the strongest position compared to the competing countries. Let's go to the yarn. As far as Bangladesh is concerned, they have 6.5 million ring spindles and about 250,000 rotors. Go to China, they have the largest spindleage. They have 1.25 million spindles, 2.5 million rotors, so they have a huge capacity of spinning available. As far as Vietnam is concerned, their share is very small like Bangladesh. They have 6.5 million spindles and roughly 110,000 rotors. In comparison, India has 52 million spindles and 850,000 rotors. The interesting fact is India's spinning industry is quite modern. It's very strong as far as yarn is concerned, and therefore in the yarn global trade or the exports, India holds 25% market share. So India is very strong as far as spinning is concerned. Now let's go to weaving, next stage of conversion. As far as weaving is concerned, Bangladesh has only 18,500 shuttle-less looms and 13,500 shuttle looms. As far as China is concerned, it's one of the biggest producer of fabrics. So it has 650,000 shuttle-lace looms and also 650,000 shuttle looms. Let's look at Vietnam. It has very limited looms, hardly 3,000 shuttle-lace looms and roughly 17,000 shuttle looms. Let's look at India. India has nearly 140,000 shuttle-lace looms and 23.7 lakh shuttle looms, which means India still has a very low technology weaving happening. 70% of the fabric production in India today is coming from powerloom sector, which is one of the biggest disadvantage India has. And therefore, whatever advantage India has in yarn is lost partly in weaving, partly in fabric, and therefore India is not able to export the fabric to the extent it could have. In fact, India is losing the advantage of value addition because of the weak link of weaving. Let's go to garments. As far as garments are concerned, Bangladesh is extremely strong in garments, as all of you know, because garment making or apparel making is a labor intensive industry and the labor cost in Bangladesh is quite low. Therefore, Bangladesh scores quite a lot. It has a lot of export oriented garment units. Government gives a lot of incentives to Bangladesh as far as garment manufacturing is concerned because it employs a lot of ladies and therefore it gets a priority as far as Bangladesh is concerned. Nearly 70% plus contribution to the export market basket in Bangladesh comes from only garments. Let's look at China. For China, the major growth engine has always been the apparel or the garment, and it's the biggest manufacturer of apparel in the world and the biggest exporter too. As far as Vietnam is concerned, in the last 5 years, Vietnam has come up very fast as far as apparel is concerned, again because of the lower labor cost. Now let's come to India. I think in the last 5 years, India's apparel growth has really been quite low. India's growth has happened in other baskets than apparels, and therefore India has actually missed the bus. The larger export share comes from the garments or the apparel, where India has a much lower share. So if you see the competitive scale, India scores as far as yarn is concerned, but starts losing thereafter because weaving is weak, processing is weak, and apparel industry is not that large to take advantage of the volumes. And therefore, India totally loses in the value addition game to the countries like Bangladesh, China, and Vietnam. Now again, when China is vacating the space in the apparel manufacturing or in the textile, low value textiles, this is actually grabbed now by Bangladesh, Cambodia, Vietnam, and now slowly Burma is coming in the picture. Unfortunately, India is losing this game because we don't have enough capacities in garment to produce and contribute to the export of garments to the world market. Now let's look very closely to the textile value chain of our Indian textile industry. Let's analyze it and find out where the issue lies. Now let's look at spinning. As I said before, we have very large capacity. We have very modern industry, fairly modernized to the extent of nearly 75%. And if you see our position in the world, as I said before, we are very competitive. Yarn export share is around 25%. So India is very strong in yarn. Let's look at weaving now, next stage. Again, as far as weaving is concerned, larger share, nearly 75% of the fabric production comes from power looms. When it comes from power looms, obviously it is in a decentralized sector, so there are issues concerning quality, output. There we have lot of limitations. And most of the textile centers like Bhiwandi, Tirupur, or even Erode, these are the areas where the production happens. It's not an organized sector. And therefore, these fabrics cannot be used for exports or cannot be used for manufacturing of garments. Weaving is slowly modernizing. The organized players are investing because they are seeing clearly there is a scope. But the pace of modernization which is happening in weaving is quite slow. And therefore, if you see the positioning, India's positioning as far as weaving is concerned, it's improving, but at a very low rate. Again, the capacity, if it has to be increased, capital investment required for weaving is very high, because most of the high-speed machines, whether they are air-jet or whether they are rapier or whether they are water-jet, all these are imported, and therefore a lot of foreign exchange is required. And in today's scenario, where rupee is depreciating, it is a big challenge for the industry to invest in these imported machines, and therefore weaving has been a weak link and is likely to be a weak link for a little more time till the major capacity is modernized. There's a major shift happening from power looms to shuttleless looms. Now let's look at another important segment of the textile value chain, that is knitting. Now, as far as knitting is concerned, the position is comparatively better if you compare it with weaving. There are strong centers of production in knitting like Tirupur, Ludhiana, Kolkata, and they have made quite a good progress in capturing a sizable share in exports. In fact, Tirupur has been one of the success stories as far as knitting is concerned. However, because of the effluent treatment issues, the industry has come under tremendous pressure, and therefore there has been some slowdown in the manufacturing and export of knitting. If you see the positioning of knitting industry today in India, it is improving with new capacities getting added. Most of the machines again are imported. There's a high value addition potential in knitting, and the focus area will be knitting, warp knitting for next few years. Unfortunately, compared to China, as far as warp knitting is concerned, India is very, very far behind. The next growth potential, as I said in earlier slides, had been sportswear, activewear, and in this kind of things, warp knitting is very important production area. Unfortunately, in India, the investments in warp knitting are much, much lower. So, as far as circular knitting is concerned, India has a better position, but as far as warp knitting is concerned, India is still far away from getting the advantage of the growing use of activewear and sportswear and many of the other articles. Let's look at another important segment of the textile value chain, processing. As all of you know, this is one of the weakest links in the textile value chain in India. Most of the process houses had been under small scale and there had not been modernization for many decades. Now slowly in the last 5 to 8 years, investments have started happening, and the highest potential, one of the highest potential of value addition has been in finishing. So now slowly new technologies are coming in. Again, there are not many state-of-the-art machinery manufacturers in India as far as processing is concerned. Larger chunk of the machines are imported from abroad. So again, there is a challenge, because if you want to modernize the capacity or increase the capacity, you will need a lot of capital infusion, and that's a big challenge for the industry today. Again, as far as processing is concerned, effluent treatment is a key issue and a problem area. If it is dealt properly, I think processing, a lot of investments can come in. Let's look at the position of processing. It's improving with new capacity additions for sure. A lot of continuous manufacturing projects are coming up from the organized sector. The focus area for next few years for investments will certainly be processing, because the backlog is quite high. Especially the organized players after GST has got a big advantage and a level playing field, and therefore I personally expect that the corporates or the bigger players will invest in weaving and processing in the next few years, which will to some extent correct the value chain. Now let's come to the last and most important segment, which is apparel manufacturing or the garment manufacturing. As all of you know, this is mainly dominated by the SME sector. There are hardly any big players, but now because of GST advantage, many of the bigger players have started investing in apparel manufacturing with big capacity creation. A lot of automation is making entry in this segment. And therefore, if you see the positioning, today India is not that strong in apparels, but if the corporates come and create bigger capacities, India has an advantage to cut out a larger share of the world market, global market. Secondly, if India moves to synthetic fabric manufacturing, also apparel sales will increase because major basket of exports is synthetic based. Government is very much aware that apparel sector or the garment sector has a huge potential for employment, and therefore government is also encouraging investments in apparel sector, and it's giving a lot of incentives for putting up larger apparel parks, and this is going to change the game in the coming years. Now, as far as the enablers are concerned, one of the important contributor or the enabler is government as far as textile industry is concerned, because for any country, the policies of government to support the industry play a major role in the growth of the industry. Now let's look at what Indian government has done for the industry. If you see for last 3-4 years, this government has been quite supportive to the textile industry, knowing the full potential of the industry to give employment, more employment to women workers, and also the high export potential of this industry, and therefore government is continuously encouraging investments, giving a lot of incentives. One by one, I'll just explain to you what are the industry friendly policies government has introduced in India in the last few years. One is they have created certain clusters for handloom and handicrafts, because a lot of people, they are dependent on this industry. There are a lot of integrated textile parks which are promoted across the country. There is a plan to connect 50 million women to the charkha or a spinning wheel in the next 5 years, which will provide tremendous employment opportunities to the women. More and more states are coming forward with very attractive textile policies, and therefore they are attracting investments in their states, creating capacities in textile. It covers both manufacturing of fabric as well as apparel. Government has come out with technology upgradation fund long back, and this has really helped the industry in modernizing the capacities. The new TUF, which is called A-TUF, has been announced a few months back, and this has been really helping the industry in modernizing the capacity. Now there is 100% FDI possible in the textile sector through automatic route, which is again a great incentive for the industry. And there is a scheme announced by government called Sathi, where it helps the industry for the revival of the powerloom sector, which is actually really suffering today because they are uncompetitive compared to the organized players. So this Sathi scheme gives a lot of incentives for adoption of new technologies to this powerloom sector. If the industry is able to take advantage of all these policy reforms and initiatives of the government, I think this will help a lot in not only increasing exports but giving employment and also raising the bar of quality and productivity of the industry. Now let's look at some hard facts of the industry before we go and look at opportunities and challenges it has. Number one, industry is still struggling with lower utilization. Labor skill is a big issue. Productivity is lower. There are a lot of older machinery still in the industry which is required to be replaced in many segments like weaving and processing. China is vacating a place in textile and moving to high-tech industry, which will really throw a lot of opportunities. But if you do the fact search, most of these opportunities are today grabbed by Vietnam, Bangladesh and some other countries, because India's garment capacity is quite fragmented. India is not able to take advantage of this. The overall financial health of the textile industry is not good at the moment. After the scams which came to the surface few months back, the government has put a lot of restrictions on banks to fund textile projects, and therefore there is a slowdown in investments in the textile industry. Also, there has been fall of bigger companies in textile which has really sent shockwaves. Big giants like Alok Industries, SEL, which had created big capacities, have closed down, which have put a question mark on the financial health of the industry. GST has been a major disrupting factor for the textile SME segment because it has thrown open a lot of opportunity to organized sector, but has threatened the very survival of the SME industry. The study on GST impact on the textile industry have shown that there had been immediate marginal drop in sales, significant drop in EBITDA of the companies, and there has been increase in raw material cost, employment cost and other costs also. So there was a blip for about 3 to 4 months. However, after this, the industry has again started looking up, and now more or less I think GST has been well stabilized. Now let's look at the challenges India has. It's very interesting to look at what challenges the industry has today as far as textile is concerned. As we have seen earlier, there is a structural weakness in the manufacturing of the value chain. We are losing a big opportunity as far as value addition is concerned. Now let's look at the statistics. India has staple fiber production or availability of roughly 10.5 billion kgs. It gets converted to approximately 5.5 billion kgs of spun yarn and 1.2 billion kgs of filament yarn, meaning it loses already 48% of the capacity. Then when you go to fabric, it's 4.5 billion kg only, another 33% drop. And finally, if it comes to garments, it's only 3.6 billion kgs. So you can imagine raw material, fiber availability 10.5 billion kg and a final apparel production 3.6 billion kgs. Which means in the value chain, India is really losing a lot of value addition opportunities. Why is happening? Because partly the fibers are exported, they are not converted to yarn. Lot of yarn is exported. As we have seen earlier, India's share in the yarn export is roughly 25%. But if you convert to fabric, finish it and make garment, it will add a tremendous value, but India loses this. Again, a lot of grey fabric is exported. A lot of finished fabric is exported. And therefore, the value chain, if you see, India is really losing a big opportunity of value addition. Now what's going to happen? If India invests in creating modern capacities in weaving and finishing, at least we have an opportunity to add value to the yarn. And then subsequently, if you have larger capacities in garment, we have another tremendous opportunity in apparel. As you start from fiber and go to apparel, at every stage there is a higher share of value addition. And therefore India can only win if it has larger value addition in the later processes. Now let's look at another challenge. If you see the present capacities in weaving and processing, they really lack state-of-the-art technologies. And this is a major hurdle in producing quality fabrics and contributing to world market. Another big challenge India has, there is a lack of innovation or product development. This is really hampering India moving up the value chain. If you see the contribution of India to the world export basket, it is mainly in the low value segment. And therefore, if India has innovative approach, India has product development, India has better quality, certainly India can look for higher segment of the market and therefore bring in higher value. One more problem or the challenge India is facing today, the industry, there is absolutely non-alignment of the segments in the industry, and therefore it actually results in a very inefficient textile production chain. How it's affecting, let's look at it. The cotton is produced in the areas like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Punjab. But nearly 40% plus spindle capacity is in South India. So the cotton has to all the way travel to south. When the yarn is produced, the yarn travels to the weaving centers as far as Bhiwandi, Ichalkaranji. So again, it adds to the cost because of transportation and logistics. For finishing, again it goes to the centers like Ahmedabad, many other places. And then apparel, finally it goes to apparel centers. So if you see the value chain, there's absolutely non-alignment, and it adds to the transaction cost at every stage. And therefore, India cannot become competitive unless these structural issues are addressed, and most of these processes are brought under at one place. If you look at China, or even for that reason Bangladesh, most of these segments of the production capacities are nearby each other. Therefore, the cost of production and cost of logistics is much lower. There India loses. One more challenge. There are a lot of sustainability issues, a lot of environmental issues are coming up in Indian production centers, and they are now becoming roadblocks because it has become very important. If you want to be part of the world trade, you have to be environmentally capable, you have to be sustainable, and there I think India has a long way to go. And last but not the least, the challenge India faces compared to other competing countries is India is really losing out on FTAs, or free trade agreements. Most of the free trade agreements are shaping the global trade today, and India is missing out. Mainly, India doesn't have FTA with Europe, and therefore Indian goods attract much higher import duty compared to countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Vietnam, and therefore our goods become expensive. So it's very important for India to pursue FTAs with major textile consuming countries.